What is going on, coffee lovers and aspiring business owners? We are 11 days into 2024. This is episode 2 of Coffee Confidential. This is episode 2 of Coffee Confidential. My name's James, and today we are going to discuss coffee cart, coffee van, and coffee trailer. So we're going to run through pros and cons of all these different setups, rough sort of estimate cost, and then also what sort of events and that sort of thing each of them could be used for. Please excuse my ramblings for the podcast. This is all just kind of off the cuff, and I'm just kind of speaking to you as if I was speaking to a friend that was about to go on the coffee journey. So one quick point before we get into the podcast: the number one thing that you need to do this business is commitment. You need to say, I am going to do this, I am going to fail, and I'm going to mess up, and I'm going to make a whole lot of mistakes along the way, and understand and acknowledge that that is what's going to happen. You're going to feel like a bag of poop for the first 6 months of your business probably. I know because I've been there. I've been through it in a coffee business and in a second business as well. So just make sure that once you have made that decision that you are going to commit and go forward with your plan, that you don't just have one bad event or a couple of bad weekends and throw in the towel. Because that's when I think a lot of people just say, oh, this isn't for me, I can't do this, this is really difficult. If you keep chipping away at it, it will get better, you will see the results in the end. But to do that, you need commitment to the business. So that's a little caveat to start the show anyway. We are going to talk differences between the three main types of mobile coffee businesses. So the first one is a coffee cart. These are great. These are absolutely awesome. This is what I started with. So coffee cart is just pretty much a table on wheels with a coffee machine and a marquee above it. So the greatest benefit of these is that they are a low cost of entry. You can organize this for probably, realistically, you could probably get away with it for about $5,000 if you do it on the cheap side, or you've got a bit of handyman skills and you can do it yourself, or you've got a friend that can help you build a cart. If you're going towards the high end of it, it would probably be about 10 to 15K. So I'm currently sitting on about my 4th or 5th coffee cart that I've gone through. The first one I did might have cost $300 to $400. I've got a couple of mates who are carpenters, chippies if you're in Australia. Joel, Sam, Tomo, Dom, love yous all. And it looked like a bag of dicks, realistically. However, what it did is it got me the experience of getting into events or markets and starting to trade and learning how cash flow works and all that sort of stuff. So a coffee cart is really good because you've got that low cost of entry there. So the risk isn't as high if it doesn't work out. And realistically, what you've got is a turnkey business to on-sell to someone else if you do decide, hey, this isn't for me, I can't do it, or whatever reason there is for changing your mind or not pursuing this business path. That coffee cart is a saleable asset. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages of mobile setups is that you have a saleable asset. And it's one of the determining factors of why I decided to go the mobile route instead of the hole-in-the-wall coffee shop or a little cafe, something like that. Because if you're putting money into fitting out a cafe, that money is going into the building and you're leasing that. And as much as you can sell the cafe at the end of it, if no one wants to buy that cafe, you've put all this money into fitting out a cafe that is essentially a sunk cost. And there's always going to be the risk of sunk cost in business. However, if you do it in a mobile setup, you can just wait until you find a buyer, realistically, and recoup your costs from what you invested, or the majority of your costs anyway. So coffee carts are great. I think the best events for coffee carts One would be private catering. So if you've got something like a wedding, they might veer more towards a coffee trailer, but you could definitely do them with a coffee cart depending on the budget for the wedding. If they're a bit of a lower budget, then they're probably going to be more inclined to just have a coffee cart there. You could do things like corporate events where they might have 50 or 100 or 200 or 300 staff or personnel, and they're all having a corporate meeting and they just want to get a coffee supplier in for the day to shout everyone a coffee. When I started out, I was doing farmers markets. It's become a little bit more competitive in the mobile coffee scene now, so farmers markets are probably more geared towards a coffee trailer than they are a coffee cart. So I think you can make just as much money with a coffee cart as you can with a coffee trailer, right? So there is one weekend a month where I roll out both my coffee trailer and my coffee cart on the same day. And they both turn over the same amount of money. So the coffee cart generally does even more money than the coffee trailer does. And the reason behind that is the foot traffic and the clientele from the events that I trade at. So coffee carts are good. You can do really high volume with a coffee cart. When I was doing one of the farmers markets that I do between 10 and 12 kilos of coffee out of a coffee cart. And that's a really good revenue day. You should be making good profit if you are doing 10 to 12 kilos of coffee in a day. If you're not profiting by doing 10 kilos of coffee, you really need to look at your costs and reevaluate what's happening there. Do you have too many staff on? Is your product not priced high enough? Because 10 kilos of coffee, you should be profiting off of that. They are also good for low volume events as well. So if you want to roll out a coffee cart, you can typically do events by yourself. If you're doing 100 coffees at an event, then you should be turning over a day's wage anyway. So typically I think about it, for 100 coffees, you should be making a day's wage. So if you average that at $5 or $5.50 a coffee, then you're pulling about $500 to $550. And then once you take cost out of that, it might cost you $100 or $200 to open for the day. You walk away with $300 at the end of the day. So that's not a massive earner, but at the same time, you are doing it for yourself. You're setting your own schedule. You've created employment for yourself, and you should be happy about serving a product that you're proud of and in an environment that you have chosen to engage in. You're not a slave to someone else. You're not running on someone else's schedule. You're making that day's wage for yourself. However, there is risk involved too, because you might go to an event and you might not make money there too. That's the other risk factor involved, I suppose. So one of the issues that I find with a coffee cart is that transport can be difficult. So the way that I move my coffee cart around is I have a small cage trailer that I put the coffee cart into. So if I'm going to break down a setup cost for you, I think this coffee cart that I built with the help of someone else was around the $600 to $700 mark. So you've got a nice hard timber surface, you've got the frame there, and then you've got some big caster wheels there too. So if you get caster wheels for a coffee cart, there's like $150 right there. If you want to take a nice hardwood surface, there's another $100 or $150 right there. And then how you frame or fit out the rest of it from there will determine the cost of the cart. So you could do a really nice one for $2,000 or $3,000. You could get a stainless steel or aluminium one for a couple grand more than that. Mine's really basic. It's just a movable table on wheels, and it turns over at a good market. It might turn over $1,500 for the day. At a bad market, it might turn over $500 for the day. But that's what do you call it? That's kind of experience. That's the ups and downs of business, I guess, the ebbs and flows. And even though I've been doing this for 4 years full time, 7 years in total, there's still stress about the risk involved with trading, especially in the last sort of couple of years of the economic climate and not knowing what is going on. But backtracking to the central point here, so the transport of a coffee cart, you'll need a cage trailer or a van perhaps just to get the coffee cart around. So that is another investment cost that you have to think about. So my cage trailer cost me around the $1,500 mark. If we round up the coffee cart to $1,000 to get it built, we're sitting at $2,500. If we add the marquee and some accessories around that as well, where there's another $500 to $1,000. So we're sitting at about $3,500 to $4,000 roughly. And then you've got your coffee equipment on top of that. So the coffee machine is one of the most important purchases for the business because it has a influential factor in determining how good your coffee can be produced. You certainly don't need a top of the line machine, a $20,000 coffee machine to make really good coffee. If you're trying to do it at a low cost startup, then $2,000 to $3,000 will get you a pretty good second-hand commercial machine, and then a grinder after that. If you're going second-hand, you'd be looking somewhere between $500 and $1,000. You could definitely spend more money if you wanted to on any of those sort of avenues, but if we throw that all together, what have we got? So we've got about $3,500 for the cart, the trailer, the accessories, and then let's call it another $3,500 for coffee machine and grinder. And that's if you want to buy everything outright, which I would suggest that. I would encourage that for the most part. At least pay for the trailer, the cart, and your accessories outright, and then consider getting a coffee machine on loan from a coffee company or leasing one. Just don't get yourself into any silly contracts that mean that you're going to be paying for a coffee machine for 3 years, even if you decide that you don't want to do this anymore. However, if you are going to do it and you've committed, that shouldn't be a worry. That shouldn't be a concern in your mind. So what are we sitting at? We're sitting at around roughly $7,000 there. So that's for the trailer, the cart, and the coffee equipment as well. Now you can always blow out a budget too. Could get a lot more expensive than that realistically, but that's sort of your base starting cost for a coffee cart. If you have a van already, if you've got a van already to go that a coffee cart and machine can go into, then you eliminate having a way to transport that as a cost. So you might save yourself $1,500 there if you've got a vehicle or trailer that can already be utilized as transport. I think one of the best things about carts is that they are really versatile and they can fit into any sort of space. If you've got a van or a trailer, they're bigger, especially trailers, like the height on my trailer sits at roughly 2.7 meters, so it's really quite tall, and when that happens, it limits you to some extent to what you can do. So you might not get those corporate catering events because they want a coffee machine set up inside the building rather than out in the car park. So that's a little consideration that you might have, whether you want to do a cart or a trailer or a van. Carts can literally go anywhere. You can do them at markets, festivals, events. One of the downsides of them, I guess, is that it might not look like you have as good a product as a coffee trailer. There's a bit more capital involved with owning or starting a coffee trailer, and so people might look at a cart as not being quite as good a product. However, if you can start getting sales and people try your coffee and meet you and you have a good connection with them, then they're going to keep coming back regardless of whether you have a cart or a trailer. So the market that I run my coffee cart at, I think I do roughly about 7 kilos a month there. Like that's, I only trade there 1 day a month, but 7 kilos, 2 staff on, that's enough to kind of break even and see a little bit of profit out of it as well. Give me 1 sec, guys. Hold on a second. I was just trying to gather my thoughts there. And I remembered one of the reasons why I kind of got fed up with the coffee trailer. So I think I had it for approximately 3 to 4 years. And one of the reasons I got fed up with it was that I just did a really big weekend. I did events Saturday, Sunday. I think I did 3 events over the 2 days with the coffee cart. And what happened was I loaded gear in and out of that coffee trailer 6 or 7 times over the weekend. And I just kind of said to myself, well, there has to be a better way to do this. And coffee trailers were a thing, obviously, but I didn't have the capital yet to buy one or build one. But as soon as I had that weekend and I was just physically exhausted. So when I do it, what I do is the coffee cart and all the equipment goes into the trailer, and my coffee machine goes into the car along with stock and all that sort of other stuff, and my eskies sit on the front of the cage trailer. And I was just broken after this weekend. It was physically exhausting, and I said there has to be a better way to do this. So that's when the plan came to the forefront to kind of build the coffee trailer. So that's what I'll go into now. Option number 2 for a mobile coffee business is a coffee trailer. So I absolutely love my coffee trailer. It's fucking awesome, and it was built from the ground up. The chassis, the walls, I helped put it all together. Obviously, people more qualified than me that are friends helped me build it. And the build took approximately between 3 and 4 months. So I have a friend that is a boilermaker, and his brother is an engineer. So I'm very lucky to have people like that in my life who are willing to help me. And obviously I paid them for the work that they did, but they didn't charge me an arm and a leg like a fully fledged business would. They did it at their sort of normal work rate, and they knew they were helping me out as well. I was helping them out with a bit of a cashy, and we built the trailer from the ground up. So it was every weekend, or about 3 weekends a month for the first 3 months. And then there was a 1 week sort of full build where we're in the shed every day, getting the trailer organized and putting it together. So I'll give you the breakdown of the budget of what it cost to build a trailer and roughly what they're going for. So to build the trailer, the shell of the trailer all up was about $10,000. So what that included was the chassis and the trailer kit. So that's things like the brakes on the trailer, the wheels, the lighting kit. That included aluminium flooring, and then all of the paneling for the walls. So what I've got there is 50mm insulated cool room paneling. And that was one of the expenses, and a little bit of stainless steel for the inside for a single workbench. The other expenses involved was buying water tanks underneath. So underneath the trailer there are 2 80-litre water tanks, and there is an 80-litre grey water tank. So one of the considerations that I had was there is quite a lot of water that goes into the coffee machine that gets put into cups that goes out to customers that doesn't necessarily need to go into the grey water tank. And that came to 10 grand pretty quickly. That was including my mate's labour cost, essentially. He did it quite cheap for me, so I'm really grateful for that. It might have even been closer to the 12 grand mark, but for the sake of this podcast, let's call it around $10,000. But that was just for an absolute shell, bare bones, no equipment, no nothing in there, just one stainless steel bench for a coffee machine to sit on. And the rest of the fit out to get it just to start trading at events was about another $5,000. So what this included was an electrician's fee and a plumber's fee. So I think the electrician was about $1,500 and the plumber was about $1,500. And then I got the trailer wrapped in vinyl. And once again, I knew someone who did vinyl wrapping, and I think typically it would go for about $5,000 to $6,000 the amount of vinyl that I had wrapped on the outside, and I got it for around the $3,000 mark. So we're sitting roughly between $15,000 and $18,000 for a bare bones trailer with some electricity in there, the plumbing done, and vinyl wrapping. Now, what's good about a coffee trailer is it is extremely weatherproof. It is so much better being protected from the elements, from if it starts raining a little bit, you're inside, you're under cover, all of your equipment's going to stay dry. You're protected from the wind, so the amount of markets that I would have where I'm out on a coffee cart under a marquee, the wind would pick up and all of a sudden all the coffee cups on top of the coffee machine just go sideways and they just get blown off the machine. And then you have the battle of picking cups up off the ground, figuring out if you're going to use that cup or not, because a customer's seen it drop onto the ground but they don't know if it's their cup or not, and then putting it back into the queue or figuring out how the queue was, where that cup was in the line anyway. So you're protected against the elements. You've got rainproof and windproof, and it keeps all of your gear and equipment dry. Because it's self-contained, it means that I'm not pulling things out of the coffee trailer just to restock or reorganize like I was in the cage trailer with the cart. It's just a matter of simply restocking things like packaging. So you've got cups, lids, coffee, milk, etc., etc. Now, as time's gone on, I've added more things into the coffee trailer. So the first thing I got, once I could afford it, was a 3-door fridge. Then I got an esky, and then I got a sink put in, just a single bowl sink. And then after that, it took a while to do these improvements to it. So I've probably put another $5,000 to $10,000 into it after that to get some stainless steel shelving in there, and then upgrade to a stainless steel three compartment sink. So that was to work towards getting a food license. I would say one of the best elements of a coffee trailer is your ability to put out volume. So I made the coffee trailer, it was 3 meters long, which felt quite large at the time. Now I see a lot of people with these sort of 4.5, 5 or 6 meter trailers, and I just think, shit, that's massive. It's probably quite hard to find certain spaces just to fit it into. But in that 3 meter trailer, I can fit four staff members on. And so what happens is I have one person on the till, one person just pulling shots. Typically I'm just steaming milk, and then I have a fourth person who is just pouring coffees, putting lids on, and just being an extra pair of hands for making ice drinks or milkshakes or whatever it might be. So you really get the ability to put out a high volume of drinks. Like I said, my busiest market that I do on a good day, I'll do between 500 and 550 drinks. And that's a great market for me. I'm really happy with that. And depending on the day, I will do it with myself and either 2 other staff or 3 other staff. It's really hectic if there is only myself and 2 others there. You're working non-stop to get all those drinks out. And I think one of the things, if you've never worked in service before, and one of the things about it is as soon as you open that coffee door and you start trading for the day, you don't close for another 6 or 7 hours. You can't switch off for another 6 to 7 hours. And you might get pumped for that entire time. So when I normally set up the coffee trailer, it's 4 a.m. I'll do my setup for the day, get everything in place, and normally I'm ready to go by about 4:45 or 10 to 5. And I just sit there for that 10 minutes and enjoy not having any customers and just being in a calm place, because I know as soon as I open that door, service doesn't stop for another 7 hours basically. One of the other really good things about coffee trailers is they're all quite unique in a lot of ways. So it gives you the ability to put your own personal touch onto it. You can brand it however you want, you can set it up however you want, and they're all kind of unique and individual. As much as they might be a similar shell, they're all different and they all function differently too. One of the biggest issues that I have with coffee trailers is going to be my water pump. I think I've burned through about 3 to 4 water pumps in the time that I've had it. It's an issue that is recurring that I really need to pay someone to just sort out permanently for me. However, I just keep buying new water pumps at the cost of $150 every 12 months or so, and it works in the short term. However, that is one of the issues that I have with them, is just having a water pump, and turning out that much volume requires a lot of water going through that pump. And so if it ever runs out of water, it gets oxygen in there and it burns out. I think coffee trailers are really great for big events, and so it gives you that capacity to do higher volume and make more revenue. So I did Woodford Folk Festival last year. Awesome festival, highly recommend it. And I was set up for a solid, realistically it was about 8 days of trade, but it was 5 full days. So it runs from Boxing Day to New Year's Day. Boxing Day, everyone starts arriving from 9 to 12 o'clock in the morning, so you're not really selling a lot of coffees that day. 27th, the festival really kicks off, but you're still not at capacity for campers and all that sort of thing. And then from the 28th to the 1st, you are just getting pumped. And I had, I think it was 6 staff on for that festival. And so the way I structured it was I had 2 people outside of the coffee trailer just taking orders, and then I had 4 staff inside the coffee trailer who were just making drinks. And the turnover for that festival was really good. The hardest thing about festivals, I think, is all of the associated costs involved before you even get there. So if you don't have a bit of capital behind you, you're going to really struggle to get to that festival and make money. So before I had even got to the festival, it had cost me approximately $20,000 to get all of my equipment and pay everything I needed to start trading in that festival. Now, I made my money back and then some from that investment, but also $20,000 is a massive layout, and all it takes is a couple of days of really bad weather, and all of a sudden what happens is your sales drop for 2 or 3 days and you don't hit your targets, and you've only just broken even for the festival. But that being said, coffee trailers are awesome. My branding that I have was almost structured around the fact that I wanted to do festivals more than any other events, festivals and farmers markets. So those are my 2 sort of main events that I do. My branding doesn't really fit well with weddings. It's quite bright and prominent, and it's really noticeable. And that's not typically something people want at a wedding. What I've seen a lot at weddings is kind of like those retro caravans with timber finishes, and they are beautiful. If I was going to get another coffee trailer, I would probably go for one of them because I think they're schmick as. I haven't been inside one yet though, so I'd have to kind of look at the structure inside. But with coffee trailers, you also get that ability to structure it inside how you want it and kind of help with the flow of service. So typically, if you're making coffee, the way it works is you work from left to right or right to left. And what this means is that wherever the customer is, they come up and order, and the person takes their order is on the left side or the right side. And then it goes down the little conveyor belt until it pops out the other end. And what this does is it helps with the flow of service. So the person at the till gets the order and they put it onto the person doing shots. The shots goes into the coffee, and then it goes next to the person that's steaming the milk, and then the person steams the milk and passes the cup to the person that's pouring and handing out coffees. So that's if you're doing high volume events. If you're doing lower volume events, there's nothing wrong with that. You can still make really good profits with turning over 200 coffees for the day. If you don't have a lot of costs involved, like if your rent is really low or non-existent and you don't have any wages, then 200 coffees can be a great profit day for you, because all you've got is coffee, milk and packaging, and then maybe yourself and your partner are in the coffee trailer and you're smashing out the 200 coffees, and there's $1,000 to $1,200 worth of sales for the day, and your product cost might only be at 20%, or it shouldn't be any higher than 30%. So between that 20 and 30% mark, and so what you've walked away with, $800 for the day, that's pretty good if you're asking me. I'm pretty stoked if I can make $800 in a day. That's not something I could ever do while I was working for someone else. And I think that's why a lot of people do start their own business, is because they see that cap or that ceiling in their skill set in working for someone else. So there's two ways around that. You can either use that skill set and turn it into your own business, where rather than working for a wage, you are now working for profits and you have that possibility for growth. Or if you're working for someone else, what needs to happen is you need to upgrade your skill set to receive a further increase in wage or salary or whatever it might be. If you are buying a coffee trailer, make sure that you are not financing the entire thing. Okay, I understand why people want to take out a loan to buy one, because it is expensive. But if you can't afford to pay for at least 50% of it outright, then I don't think you should be getting a loan, because it's really difficult in that first 12 months of business to kind of see what cash flow is going to be coming in. Are you going to get events? Maybe after a month of trying to get trades, you realize how competitive the industry is as well. And it's the penny drop sort of moment for you. And all of a sudden you've got a loan that you've got to make repayments on too. If you are going to take out a loan to do it, make sure that you still have an income outside of that business. If you have disposable income left over after you've paid for all of your rent or mortgage, food, utilities, etc., and you've got money left over left to play with, fair enough. I understand why you might want to finance some of it. But if you want to spend $20,000 or $30,000 or $50,000 on a coffee trailer and you want to go into debt to get that, you are going to be stressed beyond all measure, and all you're going to be thinking about is the money and not the product that you are producing and how you can improve the business. So steer clear of getting into debt as much as you can. What I've seen a lot of is on Facebook Marketplace, there are plenty of coffee trailers for sale of people who have decided this is too difficult, I don't want to do it, I'm going to sell. So rather than getting a brand new build, I would recommend going second hand if this is your first time doing it, because what's going to happen is you're going to save 50% off the cost. And let's say that you spend 20 grand for a coffee trailer. If the worst happens and you don't make any money, you can probably resell that for pretty close to the 20 grand that you paid for it. Now, the last sort of point for the coffee trailers, which I'm sure everyone can kind of realize, but what there is you have a lockable trailer where all your gear can stay inside and safe as well. So it makes it a lot easier rather than thinking about pulling gear out of a trailer and putting it in your garage or into storage after every event, because you're creating more work for yourself there. It does make it a lot easier once I get home on a Sunday from markets and I pack down and then I close the door and throw the lock on it. That's it. I don't have to look at that coffee trailer again until the Friday when I go to repack it for the week after. So it does make your life a whole lot easier. It saves you quite a lot on labor. When I say labor, I mean your own physical pack down and packing and pre-packing for events and all that sort of thing. It does make life a lot easier in that regard. If you've never done a coffee business before, but you've got capital, go for it, get the coffee trailer. If you're lacking the capital and you just want to put your toes in the water, maybe veer towards the coffee cart. I love my coffee trailer. It's awesome. I definitely find it much more easy to work in and work with than I do the cage trailer with the cart in it. Oh, one more point actually. If you are going to get a trailer, one of the things that you'll have to learn is how to reverse and park a trailer. Now, this is quite easy realistically. I think it took me maybe about an hour to kind of get it to the point where I could reverse in a straight line and put it into a car park very badly. But if you're not competent and you need someone else to do that with you, that's another factor involved. Reversing a trailer is a skill, and it is a skill that you will have to learn if you do buy a trailer. If you've never done it before, I'm sure you could teach yourself. I'm sure there's YouTube tutorials on how to do it. However, if you're not comfortable in reversing a trailer, it's going to make life very difficult for you very quickly, because you can't always just drive in forwards to these sorts of things. You need to learn how to maneuver that trailer, and you also need a vehicle that can tow that trailer. So let's say that you buy a big trailer that's 6 meters or something. That's a massive one, but you're going to need a vehicle that can also tow that, and you're going to be looking at quite a significant cost there as well. If you have a vehicle that can already tow a big trailer like that, then no dramas, it's not an issue. However, if you want to get a coffee trailer but you're driving, a little Toyota Corolla, then you're also going to need to upgrade your vehicle too. So that's another factor involved that you need to consider when starting up. Anyway, coffee trailers are my absolute favorite. Would recommend. And now we are moving on to the final modus of mobile coffee, which is the coffee van. Now, I don't own a coffee van. I did consider buying one at the start of last year, and I'll tell you the reason why. When it comes to coffee carts and trailers, your biggest trade days are going to be weekends. You will sacrifice your weekends because those are going to be your high profit days where you'll see the most amount of customers. If you have a coffee van, what it does, it gives you the ability to work from Monday to Friday. So typically what coffee vans do is they kind of do a run around. So they might hit office buildings, industrial estates, schools, all those sort of high capacity buildings, and they'll go to one location, they'll get the 20 or 30 or 40 people inside to come out, order their coffee, they'll make their sales in half an hour or an hour, and then they'll move to the next location. So if you're in Australia, consider this the same as like a smoko van basically, but instead of smoko, you're just making coffees out of it. And I find that a lot of people that have coffee vans trade Monday to Friday, because there are people in these buildings that don't have access to coffee. And with that coffee van, it gives you the ability to do multiple locations in the same day. Whereas if you have a coffee cart or a trailer, typically you're going to be doing one event per day, maximum two. It's quite laborious and time consuming to get there, set everything up, start trading, clean everything, pack down, put it all back into the trailer. So my setup and pack down is down to about an hour on each side. I can do it a little bit quicker depending on the size of the event. If it's a smaller event, it's a quicker setup and pack down. But with a trailer, I allocate myself a 1 hour setup time. And that gives me a little bit of grace as well. If anything goes wrong, then I've just got a little bit of extra time to start troubleshooting and fixing problems. With that coffee van, if your coffee machine can stay hot inside, all you need to do is open the door and start trading. And you've got that ability Monday to Friday in as many locations as you want. I wanted to fill up my Monday to Friday schedule with trading coffee. And the difficult thing with coffee trailers is that I offer a catering package. And the way I price this is I do 50 coffees for $350. So that is 50 coffees at $5 each, which is $250 plus a $100 call out fee. If they order 100 coffees from me, or they book the 100 coffee package, I write that call out fee off and I say 100 coffees at $5 each is $500. And that's how I know that I'm going to make my money for the day. I'm not going to be wasting my time, because if I go and do an event for the whole day and do 30 coffees, what's that, $150? It's cost me, let's call it $50 in stock to make that. And then I've got $100 left over, and that doesn't include any other expenses like petrol, or if I'm running a generator, bags of ice, all that sort of thing isn't included. So coffee vans kind of negate that factor, because you can go to one location and do 20 or 30, another location do 20 or 30, another one do 20 or 30, and all of a sudden you're sitting at 90 coffees for the day, and that's awesome. You're going to be making a wage for that day then. I find what coffee vans are also really good for is things like open houses or auctions. So if you have a coffee van, I'd be getting in touch with real estate agents who are selling homes and offering your services and say, hey, if you want to do a recurring deal, this is the price that we can offer. And what I would do is offer them a 50 coffee package, work out whatever that costs for you. And then once they've paid that, you can also say, well, if we do 60, we'll just add on the extra 10 at the end as well. And if you only sell 30 coffees, awesome. You've still made your money for the day. You've saved a little bit on product costs there too. And you're making money out of it, which is the biggest thing. And the more events that you do, the more cash flow you'll get, the better you'll get at doing those events too. So you'll find ways to minimize your costs and maximize your cash flow or your revenue. I ended up going away from the coffee van route because I ended up filling up my weekdays with other things, but I think they are really good if you want a Monday to Friday business. Now, the downside of them is that they are probably visually less appealing than a cart or a trailer. And what I mean by that is typically it's just like a trestle table with a tablecloth, and you're making coffee out the back of the van. So you might have your back to the customer the entire time, so you're not really engaging with them. And I think that they are more a convenience business than they are an aesthetic business. And people are emotional buyers, and so they'll buy with what they feel attracted towards. I'm not saying that a coffee van can't look really good and funky and be awesome, but it's just one of those things. If I saw two coffee businesses at a market, and one is a van and them standing at the back of it with their back turned to me and just a trestle table, and the other one's a big branded coffee trailer, I'm probably going to go with the trailer first rather than the coffee van. However, I am also heavily biased too. Coffee vans are great if you want to do off-grid stuff as well, where there isn't power or water available. So I have a generator for the coffee trailer, so I'm quite lucky that I am self-sufficient, so I don't need to be plugged into a power source or a water source to trade for the day. Some coffee trailers will need power or they will need to get plugged into water. It just depends on what your build is like and how much volume you're doing. But if you have a van, everything must be self-contained. So you will have water on board, you will have power on board, and it just means that you are entirely self-sufficient and you can trade just about anywhere. With the coffee machines in a coffee van, there's two ways to do it. So majority of coffee vans that I know of, what they do is they run a gas heated coffee machine. So because it takes so much power to warm a coffee machine up, with gas power, it means that you're not sucking so much power. Because if you had to rely on batteries to run a coffee machine, it's just going to suck them until they're empty. Like, I think it's going to be near impossible I don't want to say near impossible actually, I take that back, but it's just going to be a very expensive setup to have that many batteries, or the other way to do it would be to have a generator with the coffee van, but then you've got the noise pollution aspect as well. But the coffee machines in coffee vans are typically gas heated. In Australia, there's only one coffee machine that I know of, which is like the DiFrancino, something like that anyway, that is gas heated, and that is pretty much stock standard for all the vans that I've seen. And then the benefit is whatever power you need is only needed to run a fridge and a grinder and your lights and any other equipment that you might have in there. So you're not sucking so much power, so you don't need to spend so much money on like an electrical setup essentially. When it comes to cost for the coffee van, I've seen massive fluctuations with these. I've seen them from like $15,000 all the way up to like $80,000. And the fluctuation there will depend on, one, the vehicle that the coffee business is in. So if it's in a $15,000 vehicle, then the price will reflect that. If they've got a big massive van that costs $50,000, then the price will reflect that as well. So that's why you get such a variance in cost with coffee vans, because half the cost is the vehicle and then the other half of the cost is the business setup aspect of it. So that's things like your water, electricity, coffee machine and equipment, and how it's set up. So that's the other factor. Depending on what you want to do will determine the type of van that you want as well. Now, the other consideration with a coffee van is that if you have car problems, you also have business problems. So if your van breaks down and it costs you, let's say you blow a head gasket or something in the engine, and all of a sudden you're looking at $5,000 to repair that van, then you have lost your cash flow for however long it takes to fix that van. If you have a coffee trailer, you can always swap out the tow vehicle for it. It leaves the possibility of having another tow vehicle. If you have a van and you run into engine or vehicle problems, you have no other outlet apart from to fix that problem. So it might be a small fix, it might be a flat tire, that's easy enough. But if you have big engine problems, that then becomes a business cost as well. And while that business, while the vehicle is out of action, you are losing all of your potential income that you would have been getting. Now, if I have a coffee trailer and my car breaks down or it doesn't work, worst case scenario, I can rent a vehicle for the weekend to continue doing trade while my car is being fixed. And I might not make as much money because of that rental cost there. However, It means that I keep that trade going, I keep that cash flow happening, I keep my stock turning over, I keep my employees being paid as well. So it just helps with the flow of business. So there's all these little pros and cons that between the coffee cart, the coffee trailer, and the coffee van. I hope that sheds some light onto the intricacies of each of them there and gives you a bit of guidance into which one you might prefer or which one suits your sort of business model. There was someone that I was talking to that wanted to start a mobile coffee business. I did a consult for them, and we were talking about doing a coffee trailer, and I said to her how pretty much, the best way to make money is by trading on the weekends because you get the highest turnouts for all the events, etc., etc. And she said, oh, but I've got like a friend's wedding on this weekend, and I've got an anniversary that weekend, and I need to go out this weekend, and we're going on holidays that weekend. And if you are not willing to sacrifice what you do on the weekends to make money in your coffee business, I would not recommend starting. And that might be harsh, but I think people need to hear that because it's going to save you a lot of money, time, and frustration and just feeling like a bit of a failure. I've been through enough failures myself, guys, so that is why I'm telling you kind of how this all works. I think that's enough of me yammering on for the episode anyway, but that is cart versus trailer versus van. I'm James, wishing all of you all the best and see you next week. All right, Coffee Confidential out.